homage to the fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all the benevolent lineage masters. The supreme Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered, even in millions of eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, may we all generate the supreme bodhicitta. Next, we will study the third type of preta suffering, the preta suffering from specific obscurations. The original text says, these pretas undergo a wide range of experiences, differing from one to another in both nature and intensity. For instance, some are tormented by countless creatures living on their bodies, feeding upon their flesh. Additionally, there are many other unknown illnesses and sufferings they endure. Therefore, we can say that the specific obscurations here refer to special kinds of obstacles that pretas face. The sufferings are generally similar to the experiences of certain creatures living in the sea or mountains, as a preta may have numerous other pretas living on its body and devouring it. Here are a few stories elaborating the pretas suffering from specific obscurations. For instance, a long time ago, once when Venerable Śroṇa was traveling in the land of the pretas, we haven't mentioned this story before, right? Śroṇa, who is also known as Venerable Sonakutikana, came to the realm of pretas. He stepped into a palace. It is described as a palace here, while in Vinaya Sutra it is said to be in a garden. Then he found that there was a beautiful woman who was a beauty preta in the palace, with a dignified appearance and a gracefully slender figure. Even among pretas, there are exceptionally beautiful female pretas, such as the beauty preta here. Exquisitely formed and embellished with precious jewels, she was breathtaking in her beauty. At each of the 4 legs of her throne, a preta was bound. So the beauty preta here owns a throne that was adorned with precious jewels, and to each of the 4 legs of this throne, a preta was tied. This is similar to how some people keep their dogs on a leash nowadays. Now, the text continues as, the beauty preta offered Śroṇa something to eat, but strictly instructing him not to give even the smallest morsel to other hungry ghosts, no matter how much the other pretas would beg. Even the tiniest bit of food should not be given to them. Then, the beauty preta left after saying this to Śroṇa. Some scriptures mention that she went to another room. Then, when Śroṇa was about to eat, the pretas began to beg for food. They pleaded desperately, saying, Venerable Śroṇa, we haven't had any food for such a long time. Could you please give us a little to eat? Śroṇa felt great compassion for them and could not bear to see them starving in this way. Therefore, Śroṇa gave a round mass of food to one of the pretas. However, it turned into chaff. And when he gave some food to another preta, the food turned into a hammer. The hammer here refers to a lump of iron, which is a ball made of burning iron. Venerable Śroṇa continued to give food to the other 2 pretas. However, when Śroṇa gave food to the 3rd preta, the food turned into this preta's own flesh and he started to eat it. The food he gave to the 4th preta transformed into pus and blood, which the preta continuously consumed. The food offered to 4 different pretas underwent grotesque transformations. One became chaff, another a burning lump of iron, the 3rd turned into the preta's own flesh, and the 4th became pus and blood. It is very terrifying that sometimes we cannot even imagine it. So, when hearing this, we may even wonder whether such things really happen. We have this kind of doubt because we have never seen such a scene with our own eyes before. Especially for beings like us in Jambudvipa, we are prone to particularly strong wrong views. Additionally, a few fellow practitioners here haven't cultivated a belief in the law of karma while growing up, leading to deeply ingrained wrong views that make it difficult for them to believe this is true. A few of us might have such negative thoughts. doubts or skepticism. But in fact, what Buddha described in sutras is absolutely true. So, it is certain that all the food given to the pretas all became these substances: chaff, a lump of iron, flesh, pus, and blood. At this time, the preta who swallowed the burning lump of iron had his whole body on fire, emitting a very unpleasant smell. The beauty preta smelled it and realized something was wrong, screaming as she came out from another room. She found that these pretas were suffering in various ways. The beauty preta cried to Śroṇa, "Didn't I tell you not to give them anything? Do you think that you are more compassionate than I am?" Because she had told Śroṇa before not to give even the tiniest bit of food to the pretas. Then Venerable Śroṇa said, "I originally didn't want to give them anything, but they looked so pitiful and were starving so desperately. Out of great compassion, I felt I had to give them something, and so I did." At this time, the beautiful female preta said to him, "Has your compassion already surpassed mine?" Śroṇa did not understand why she said this and asked, "Why does your compassion surpass mine?" What exactly is your relationship with these pretas? So here, the original text is, "What is your connection to these four?" Śroṇa asked her. Then the beauty preta introduced them one by one to Śroṇa. Pointing to one preta, she said, "This was my husband." Pointing to another, "That one was my son." Then, "That was my daughter-in-law." And the fourth was my servant in my previous life. Then Venerable Śroṇa asked further, "What actions from your past led you to this place? Your whole family is now working in the realm of pretas." Of course, we can't really say working in the realm of pretas, as pretas experience extensive suffering here, just as we would not say someone is working in prison, right? So here Śroṇa asked what karma caused all of them to be reborn here. The people of Jambudvipa tend to be overly skeptical. The beautiful female preta replied, "You will never believe me. It's better not to say." She mentioned the people of Jambudvipa are very skeptical. In this regard, I have also noticed that especially people in big cities are very prone to doubt and conceptual thoughts. For example, there are things they should genuinely believe in, but they would not, and sometimes they even think over and over, wondering, it can't be like this or it can't be like that. They always overthink and generate all kinds of conceptual thoughts and doubts. So when the beauty preta said, "You people of Jambudvipa are very skeptical, so I'd better not say anything, because even if I tell you, you won't believe it." Venerable Śroṇa replied, "Seeing it with my own eyes, how could I not believe you? Please tell me." So the beautiful female preta began to vividly recount their story. She described what they had done in their previous lives, detailing their actions and the consequences that led to their current suffering. "I lived as a Brahmin woman in a village. One evening I prepared fine food for the following day, which was to be auspicious. At that time, the Venerable Katyayana came by on his alms round. Different sutras refer to Venerable Katyayana by different names, with some calling him Venerable Mahakatyayana. So, here, Venerable Katyayana happened to come to the city where the beauty preta once lived, seeing alms. The beauty preta continued to say, "I trusted him and offered him food. Then I thought, perhaps my husband would also wish to share in the merit. The beauty preta thought at the time that my husband might be happy about this too. So she told her husband, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have offered alms to the great and noble Katyayana, the heir of the Buddha.' She was indeed very devout that she offered all the prepared food to Venerable Katyayana. However, she didn't anticipate that her husband was furious after hearing this. As the original texts say, but he grew furious. You haven't yet offered food to the Brahmins nor shown respect to your family and friends, yet you give the first portion of the food to this shaven-headed monk. Why can't he stuff his mouth with chaff? The husband responded very unhappily and began using abusive language. Even today, in some cities, when people make offerings to certain eminent monks or masters, their family members disagree and then they argue with each other. Some family members even smash the statues of the Buddha or slander the Sangha. This kind of phenomenon is quite common. These people are truly pitiful, as their actions will inevitably lead them to fall into the hell or preta realms in the future, because the law of karma never fails. If these actions are not repented, they will certainly result in rebirth in the lower realms. Sometimes it seems that some people in cities nowadays create truly frightening karma, but they themselves don't care at all, which is really sad. So this explains the karmic result of giving the first preta food that turned into chaff. Then the beauty pretas continued recounting her story from her previous life. I put the same proposal to my son, but he too grew angry. Why doesn't that bald monk swallow lumps of iron instead? He shouted. That night, my relatives sent me delicious food, but my daughter-in-law selfishly ate it all, leaving me only plain, tasteless food. When questioned about this, the daughter-in-law had seemingly denied eating the delicious dishes and offering only the poorest quality meal to me. She spoke falsely to me, saying, "I would sooner eat my own flesh than touch a meal intended for you." Furthermore, we can see that this family was very unlucky, performing all kinds of bad actions. Likewise, after consuming the meal she was supposed to deliver to my family, my servant insisted she would rather drink blood and pus than steal food from me. This shows the different karmas of these four people. The reason why the whole family was against her was probably that she made an offering to Katyayana. They didn't understand why she was doing so and refused to rejoice with her. Moreover, they treated her with a very bad attitude. Facing this series of setbacks, I secretly made an evil wish. So she made an evil wish, the consequences of which are terrifying. Because originally she was supposed to be reborn in the heavenly realm, but I wished to be reborn where I could see what happened to them as a result of their actions. I myself became a powerful preta because of this evil wish. The consequences of making an evil wish are truly horrible. If one cannot take their mind onto the path of enlightenment, it is very likely for them to make evil wishes. So here she was reborn as a powerful preta because she still retained some merits from making offerings to Venerable Katyayana. Had I not made such a specific wish, I would have been reborn in the heaven of the 33 among the gods, due to my previous merit of giving alms to a sublime being. Then the beauty preta said to Śroṇa, "Should you visit our village, kindly inform my daughter, who is engaged in prostitution, that you have met her parents, and that we have entrusted you with a message. Her current lifestyle will lead to harm. It is not the right path, and she must turn away from such destructive choices." So the beauty preta wanted Śroṇa to deliver a message to her daughter when he returned to the human realm. She wanted her daughter to know that her behavior was highly improper and urged her to change her ways of living. The beauty preta paused for a moment, then continued. "Should she not believe you, inform her that within her father's former home lie 4 iron pots, each filled with gold. The sutra describes that the 4 iron pots filled with gold were under the beauty preta's bed in her previous life, and here it is noted as being in her husband's old house. It seems the Vinaya Sutra recorded that the gold was under the beauty preta's own bed. Along with the pots of gold, there is a golden plate and an ablution jar for monks. Some also mentioned a golden stick. There's a slight difference in some details, but everything else is exactly the same. let her take those things and make offerings to the great and sublime Katyayana, dedicating all merit in our names. In doing so, our negative karma will be lessened until it is finally brought to an end. So she finally requested that it's best to mention their names. The tradition in some Han areas of China is the same as that in Tibetan areas. That is, every time people have a puja or offer sacrifice to protect a departed spirit, they write the names of the deceased parents, relatives or friends on paper to dedicate the merit to them. This is very important, as I also mentioned before. It's not appropriate that some people only write down the name of the deceased once, right after he passes away, and never do it again. Even if the person has been dead for many years, you should still write down his name and invite the Sangha to do recitations for him whenever you think about this person. If possible, it's best to mention his name when the Sangha is dedicating the merit. I don't know whether there is such a tradition in Han area, but in Tibetan region, during reciting prayers, there is specifically one person would spend a long time reading the names of the deceased. Some people only offer 5 RMB but list the names of 50 individuals, which I think is not appropriate, as it takes too much time to recite all the names. But no matter what, it's best to write down the names of the deceased. By so doing, even if the deceased has been reborn as a hell being or a preta, they can immediately get liberated from the lower realms, providing someone in the human realm reads his name and dedicates the merit to him. This has been verified from examples in the sutras, in stories of eminent masters visiting the lower realms, and through the visions of the great accomplished masters in their pristine awareness. Therefore, it is very important in our daily lives to do the prayers, rituals, or indications for the deceased. The stories of the beautiful female preta mentioned above are from Han areas of China. Recorded in the first volume of Karmavastu of the Mulasarvastivada Vinaya, which was translated by Master Yijing of the Tang dynasty. The text is translated into ancient Chinese, which is not easy to understand, but the plot is more or less the same. Almost all the examples I quoted this time when teaching the aspiration prayer of Sukhavati and the words of my perfect teacher can be found in the sutras. And I've introduced each of these examples to you in detail. Therefore, those who are studying the words of my perfect teacher must not think this is just the viewpoint of Tibetan Buddhism. It has nothing to do with me because I am not pursuing Vajrayana, because all the above-mentioned stories are from the sutras or shastras. They are all interconnected and related, regardless of whether they originated in India, Tibetan region, or Han area. So it is essential for everyone to clearly understand the law of karma. Once we grasp these karmic results, we will pay attention to our actions. For instance, you may not have cared previously when some of your family members were against making offerings to eminent masters or monastic institutions, and you might have even reprimanded such virtuous actions severely. However, after learning about the karmic consequences of such negative actions, you and many others will no longer dare to casually disregard the law of cause and effect. People who have established right views won't be willing to engage in such negative actions anymore. So we should gain something from each Dharma class we attend and examine ourselves. For example, after learning today's stories, we should reflect like, have I ever committed such a misdeed before? If yes, what should I do to purify my faults? What should I do if I encounter something similar in the future? After such self-reflection, many of us will reform ourselves and be cautious of our actions. This is one story we've discussed. Don't be naughty in class, okay? You can't wiggle around during the class. Do you understand? All right, don't move. If you stay still, I'll give you an apple later. Even moving a little bit is not allowed. Let me make that clear first. Okay? All right. Here is another story. Everyone should contemplate these two stories carefully. Once, while Master Jetari was traveling, he arrived in the realm of pretas. Master Jetari, Drala Namgyal, the Chinese translation of his name has the meaning of defeating all enemies. He was an influential Buddhist philosopher, scholar and master, known for his extensive works on Madhyamaka. When he was traveling in the realm of preta, he met a female preta. "My husband went to Bodh Gaya 12 years ago looking for food," the preta told Master Jetari. Her hideous form concealed a mother's deep anguish as she spoke of her 500 starving children. "Please, if you travel there, tell him to return quickly, or our children will die of hunger." The female preta asked the master to deliver such a message to her husband. Master Jetari was a bit confused. "What does your husband look like?" asked the master. "All pretas look the same. How am I supposed to recognize him?" "You can't miss him," said the female preta. "I know my husband very well, and I am confident that you will recognize him immediately when you see him. He is a preta with 9 ugly features, a huge mouth, squash nose, and tiny eyes, would be easily recognizable even among humans." When Master Jetari arrived in Bodh Gaya, he witnessed a novice monk distributing food and water offerings. Once the novice left, a massive crowd of pretas frantically gathered, competing to consume the meager sustenance. Among them was the one Jetari had been looking for, who looked just as the female preta had described, with a huge mouth, a squashed nose, and small eyes. So Master Jetari gave him his wife's message. The preta, feeling utterly helpless, poured out his troubles to Master Jetari. "I've been wandered here, away from home, for 12 years, but I never got a thing. In 12 years, I have only obtained a tiny bit of a pure monk's snot as food." He said he had to fight fiercely among other hungry ghosts, getting severely beaten while competing for this minuscule morsel. He held this tiny amount of substance tightly in his hand, unable to get any more food. He held it so tightly that he didn't even notice his thumb went directly through his palm. Unfortunately, the snot had dried up a long time ago. Yet, he still desperately wanted to bring it back to his children as food. As we can see, the attachment that a parent has to his or her child is very strong, and this also applies to pretas. However, what the child pays back to the parents is often very limited. So, if one is reborn as a preta, it is indeed very painful. Regarding the lifespan of pretas, different sutras have different views. Some state it can reach up to 70,000 years, while others suggest it may be as long as 84,000 years. It is really sad that they cannot get any food for such a long time. Therefore, while we are still in the human realm, we must meditate on the suffering of pretas. This is part of our practice. We can sometimes meditate on the causes of the rebirth, or some other times on the specific torments, and then reflect about ourselves. How many misdeeds have I committed that will cause me to be reborn as a preta? Will I really fall into the realm of pretas in my next life? Such constant reflection and visualization is in fact a very profound practice. Some fellow practitioners believe that practicing Ngondro only involves doing such as prostrations. While they are willing to engage in these kinds of physical practice, they find it very challenging to engage in contemplation in their minds. And when it comes to contemplation in mind, most people are only interested in visualizing the bindu, the radiance, or the mantra syllables illuminating, but they can barely meditate on the profound instructions that are of great meaning in this life and the next. Currently, I have been giving teachings on the Longchen Nyingtik Ngondro, 3 bases and 3 virtues, every day. I met a Dharma student just now, and I asked him, "Have you meditated on these teachings?" He said, "I don't practice according to your instructions." Then I asked, "What do you practice?" He replied, "I follow the practical instructions of the middle way, and also integrate the experience of my own." It seems he has climbed pretty high in practice. Meditating according to the combination of the middle way and his own view definitely goes beyond the state of Nyondro. But for me, although my state of realization is mediocre, my teachings have certain auspicious dependent arising. If we completely abandon the instructions in the Nyondro teachings and come up with a new practice based on our conceptual thoughts, claiming that this is my own realization of the middle way that is free from any fabrications, then I am afraid such a meditation may not be effective. This is because it relies solely on just your own fabricated thoughts and worldly opinions, rather than on the guidance of the great masters. This is also why some people make no progress in their practice. We should follow the words of the noble ones. The teachings of many great masters have been clearly recorded in written form, such as what Mifam Rinpoche, Longchenpa, or Patrul Rinpoche said in their teachings. If we adhere to their guidance and repeatedly reflect upon it, it will undoubtedly have an effect on our mind. However, if we disregard these masters' instructions and insist on making up our own practices, we may not attain the same state as the great masters, just like digging a small hole without seeing the hole. Ever since I started to teach the words of my perfect teacher, sometimes I am happy because many people have put the teachings into real practice. But sometimes I am a bit upset because some people don't value the teachings. No matter how many hours you teach, they don't care and practice elsewhere on their own. Some people have even advised me not to teach too much, suggesting that I only introduce a few things for them to practice, which is not very reasonable. Even in a worldly setting, when recruiting public servants, the candidates should have at least a bachelor's degree. Very few can pass with just an associate degree now. What is the purpose of such a requirement? This is because without the foundation of a bachelor's degree, it is very difficult to be qualified to do the work. So even for a simple worldly job, a strong foundation is very necessary. Then, when it comes to the profound, supreme, and transcendental state in the Dharma practice, how can we expect to achieve any substantial state if we simply engage in meditation blindly without first carefully studying the Dharma? I really doubt it. Recently I heard a few people here say, "So-and-so center focuses on studying the texts, but our college focuses on practice, which is at a very high level." He was advertising himself and his affiliated college to others in such a way, even when he was on a bus. Of course, he is free to promote as he wishes, and if he is really at a very high level, we would rejoice for him or even prostrate before him. Whoever has realization, we can respectfully prostrate to them. However, any supreme state in the Dharma practice requires a foundation. And in this regard, Buddhism transcends all worldly foundations. If you don't grasp this well, and instead you only focus on a portion of the practical instructions and stick to it all day long, you'll be out of your mind eventually. This is why some people's practice often goes wrong. It is a very dangerous way of practicing if one hasn't yet established a solid foundation through the preliminary practices, including the sufferings of samsara, the rarity of human body, and more, but instead only sticks to one particular advanced approach and practices it every day, with the aim of soon attaining enlightenment. This mindset is highly dangerous and requires serious attention. Let's go back to the text. Here it also mentions that the merit of making offerings to the pretas is very great. When we meditate on the suffering of the pretas, we first have to know the causes of falling into the realm of pretas. 10 causes are listed in The Buddha Speaks of the Differences in Karmic Retribution for Elder Shuka Sutra. First, committing minor misdeeds of the body. Second, committing minor misdeeds of the speech. Third, committing minor misdeeds of the mind. So, the first three are minor misdeeds committed through body, speech and mind. Then, the fourth, feeling more greed among all mental afflictions or attaching to many things. Fifth, craving for something unwholesome. Sixth, being jealous. Seventh, holding wrong views. Eighth, clinging to something at the moment of death. Ninth, dying of hunger. 10th, dying of thirst. After knowing these 10 karmic causes lead to rebirth as pretas, we should analyze and examine whether we have committed such misdeeds according to the views of the sutras. If yes, then we should repent and purify these negative thoughts and actions through means such as reciting mantras. In the Dharani Sutra for bringing salvation to the hungry ghost with the flaming face, which was translated in the Tang dynasty in Han areas, there is another story. It says that when Venerable Ananda once went outside, he saw a preta with a ferocious and particularly frightening face. This preta told him, "You will only live for another 3 days, and will be reborn as a preta after death." Upon hearing this, Ananda was horrified, so he asked, "Is there any way to prevent this from happening?" The preta answered, "If you want to avoid falling into the realm of preta or dying in such a short time, you must make offerings to as many Brahmins, sages, and other sublime beings as there are grains of sand in the Ganges River, giving each of them as much food and drink as can be contained in 1 Magadha measure. Additionally, you also need to make offerings to the 3 jewels. Only then can you avoid falling into the realm of pretas. Otherwise, there's no way." After hearing this, Venerable Ananda thought about it and felt it was impossible for him to make such a large scale of offering or giving. Terrified, he rushed to the Buddha, said in great fear, "World-honored one, please save me. A preta told me I would die in 3 days and be reborn as a preta. What should I do?" The Buddha told Ananda a special mantra, as the Buddha said to him, "Once, when I was a Brahmin in my previous life, I received a mantra from Avalokiteshvara and the Tathagata named Carefree Virtue. This mantra can help prevent you from falling into the realm of pretas. I have also saved countless pretas with this mantra, Chi. If you recite it, you won't be reborn as a preta anymore. Remember, you must recite it at least 7 times. Then the Buddha introduced and recited this mantra as Nama Sarva Tathagata Avalokaite Om Sambara Sambara Hum. This mantra is the one we recite while making food offerings during the sadhana of fire puja. Nama Sarva Tathagata Avalokite Om Sambara Sambara Hum. It is also the same in recitation ritual in Han areas as Namo Sarva Sambara Sambara Hum. The pronunciation is slightly different due to translation. This mantra can be found in ritual or in the morning and evening prayers commonly practiced in Han areas. This is the mantra to prevent falling into the realm of pretas. Usually, we should first place some food in a clean container and bless it by chanting this mantra 7 times. Afterward, sprinkle a bit of water on the food. Then we can either put the food outdoors or burn it in a fire. Any being touched by the smoke will receive the benefits. If we chant this mantra, we can make offerings to billions of Tathagatas, and the sufferings of countless pretas can be alleviated. In addition, when doing the fire puja for pretas, Tibetans will normally chant the names of 4 Tathagatas. Rinchen Mang La Chaksal Lo, Zukje Dampa La Chaksal Lo, Kujam Le La Chaksal Lo, Jikpa Tamche Yongsu Dralwe La La Chaksal Lo. And I have also checked, it is the same in Chinese. There are the names of 4 Tathagata as Tathagata who possesses all jewels, Tathagata who has precious form, Tathagata whose body is omnipresent, and Tathagata who is apart from fear. These four correspond to what we introduced above. Rinchen mang la chaktsal lo, Zukje dampa la chaktsal lo, Kujamle la chaktsal lo, Jikpa tamche yongsudralwe la chaktsal lo. The meaning of these names of the four Tathagata is the same in both Tibetan and Chinese. By reciting these names of Tathagata, countless pretas or ghosts can be liberated from their sufferings. Therefore, we should recite these mantras and names every time we do the fire puja for pretas. No. Additionally, reciting these mantras is incredibly powerful and greatly helps the bardo body after someone passes away. It is also beneficial for worldly ghosts, earth gods, or other non-humans that may have intentions to harm us. When the Sangha of Han Chinese Buddhism is making food offerings, they normally recite the names of the four Tathagata together with many other mantras. For example, these are included in their daily chanting book. First, the universally invoking mantra, the mantra of relieving hatred, the mantra of widening throat, the mantra of transforming food, the mantra of ambrosia water, the mantra of offering to the Buddha, and the mantra of bestowing food without obscurations, and many others. In fact, many of our Dharma fellows at Larungar should also know how to recite the daily chanting in the Han area. A few Sutrayana practitioners in the Han area claim that they don't practice Vajrayana, yet they are unaware that what they recite during their daily morning and evening chanting are all Vajrayana mantras. And they even chant more Vajrayana mantras than we do. In the morning, they recite the Shurangama mantra, the Amitabha Pure Land Rebirth mantra, the Great Compassion mantra, the 10 short mantras, and so forth. They may have recited more mantras than we, tantric practitioners. In fact, these mantras recited daily during morning and evening chanting in the Han area are well grounded in Buddhist scriptures. From the very beginning, during the Tang dynasty, these practices had not been quite unified yet. Later, in the Ming dynasty, Master Lianqi and Master Uyi Jikshu, for the betterment of their disciples' practice, started to standardize the content of the morning and evening chanting. Afterwards, the recitation was finalized by Master Yulin Tongxiu, who required all monasteries in the Han area to unify their daily recitations. So nowadays, temples in the Han areas conduct almost the same morning and evening chanting, which include the recitation of the Amitabha Sutra, the 88 Buddha's Great Repentance, and the Mengshan food bestowal ritual, among others. The Mengshan food bestowal ritual was specifically composed by Master Ganlu at Mengshan of Ya'an, Sichuan province, to make food offerings to pretas. Since then, in the Han area, there are forms of a big offering and a small offering in the practice of Mengshan food bestowal ritual. The former refers to Fang Yen Ko, also known as flaming mouth ceremony, which is a formal food offering puja, and the latter refers to the food offering performed every day during the evening chanting. The origin of Fang Yen Ko, or food offering, can be traced back to the Liang dynasty. Chan Master Baoji compiled it based on some Indian mantras, and later, some of its contents were slightly reorganized. I have seen many recitations, such as some mantras or rituals in Han Chinese Buddhism, are almost the same as those chanted in Tibetan Buddhism, especially the part of reciting the mantras when praying to Dharma protectors, making offerings to pretas, or performing the sadhana of fire puja in the afternoon or evening every day. Additionally, the mantras we just mentioned in the Dharani Sutra for bringing salvation to the hungry ghost with the flaming face, and the names of the 4 Tathagatas are all the same in both Han Chinese Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism. Therefore, after understanding this, we should dedicate the merit whenever we recite mantras, perform rituals, or engage in other practices. Also, I think it is very essential for us to maintain daily prayers as a consistent practice. Some Vajrayana practitioners believe that the daily prayers in Chinese Buddhism are of little use to them, so they fall asleep when doing daily chanting with the Sangha in a Chinese Buddhist temple. This is inappropriate. In fact, not only Chinese Buddhism places great importance on daily recitation, but also in Tibetan Buddhism, a newly ordained monastic will be asked to memorize all the prayers in the recitation in order to be qualified to join the Sangha. Otherwise, they would not be accepted. Therefore, you should not think that because I study Vajrayana, the Sutrayana recitations are not important to me. This is not true. Actually, the mantras and the names of the Buddha used in the morning and evening prayers in Chinese Buddhism all come from the Tripitaka, as stipulated by great masters like Master Yulin Tongxu during their compilations. Therefore, the compilation of the chanting prayers was not based on the teachings of specific lineages or masters, such as those from the Pure Land School or others. Basically, the temples I visited all follow the same routine and daily prayers. The Sangha began their chanting at 4 a.m., since I didn't know how to chant. Once when I visited a temple in the Han area, I decided to stay at the doorway and silently watch the Sangha. While listening to their beautiful chanting, I felt inspired, and the tunes of the chanting were standardized across all these temples. I hope that practitioners of Tibetan Buddhism, both monastics and lay practitioners, will also learn the morning and evening prayers of Han Chinese Buddhism, as these prayers encompass the Vajra words of the Sublime Ones. Thus, each of you should chant the prayers well. At the same time, Sutrayana practitioners shouldn't slander Vajrayana, because much of what you recite in the morning and evening consists of tantric mantras. Apart from this, there's nothing else specifically referred to as Vajrayana. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense if you denounce Vajrayana while reciting Vajrayana mantras. Now, let's go back to the text. To summarize, pretas universally suffer from extreme hunger and thirst, regardless of their specific manifestation. Mentally taking on their torments requires recognizing their profound deprivation. Consider how challenging it is for us to endure even a few hours without food or water, and then imagine their endless karmic suffering spanning lifetimes. We should meditate with sincerity on their immense pain. Imagine being reborn in a realm where, for countless years, not even the mention of water could be heard. How would you feel? Everyone should think, when we're living in the human realm, how do we feel even if we don't eat for just one day? Then how would we feel if we were reborn as a preta? Reflect that the main causes for rebirth as a preta are stinginess and obstructing the generosity of others. We ourselves have engaged in such deeds countless times before, and so we must take every effort to avoid rebirth in the preta realm. We should reflect on ourselves in this life and consider how much misdeeds we have committed, especially those related to stinginess, which are quite significant. For ordinary people, except for those who are naturally generous and enjoy giving, many are very stingy, and they feel as if it is as painful as cutting their own flesh when they give just a little bit to others. So we should confess all of these karmic habitual tendencies to avoid being reborn as a preta. There is a story in the Kalpana Manditika, the garland of examples adorned by poetic fancy. Once, a king went hunting at the foot of a mountain. He saw a pagoda along the way, so he immediately offered 5 coins to the pagoda. It happened that a man nearby saw the king's act, and he was very rejoiceful in his heart. So he said, "Good indeed, good indeed," as a compliment on the king's generosity. But the king was unhappy upon hearing it, because he mistakenly thought the man was laughing at him. The king felt embarrassed for offering only 5 coins. As being a king, he should make offerings on a much larger scale. So when the man said, "Good indeed," it triggered the king's anger, thinking he was being mocked. As a result, the king ordered his attendants to take the man back to the palace. The king asked this person, "You said good indeed when I offered 5 coins. Were you actually laughing at me because I offered too little? Or for some other reason?" That person was very scared and began to beg. "I dare say only if your majesty grants me pardon. Can you forgive me and declare me innocent?" The king answered, "Fine, I will grant pardon to you. Now tell me why." The person thanked the king's kindness and began his story. "I used to be a bandit in mountains. One day I saw a man holding money in his hand. So I caught him and asked him to give me the money, but he refused, clenching his fist, and wouldn't loosen up even at the cost of his life. At first I threatened him with harsh words, but he still wouldn't let go of what was in his hand. Then I threatened him with my bow and arrow, but he still clenched his fist tightly. Later on, I knocked an arrow on my bow and aimed at him, pretending to shoot him in a moment. I said to him, 'If you don't give me the money in your hand, I will kill you immediately.' But he still refused to open his hand. So I thought he must be holding something extremely valuable, given how much he seemed to treasure it. In the end, driven by my increasing greed, I shot him dead. When I finally managed to pry open his fist, to my surprise, all I could see was only a small copper coin. People like this person would rather give up their lives than give up a small coin. Therefore, in comparison to these kinds of people, I genuinely rejoiced that Your Majesty willingly offered 5 coins to the pagoda, without being coerced by anyone using a bow and arrow. You voluntarily offered 5 coins, which is truly worth rejoicing. Therefore, when I said good indeed, I didn't mean to laugh at you, not even the tiniest bit. Good indeed means I genuinely rejoice. Any person who voluntarily makes even a small offering to the 3 jewels, Buddha statues or stupas, is truly deserving of rejoicing. No one should say, since this person is very wealthy, he should have given more. Why does he donate so little? We should not make such comments because any offering made without a stingy attitude is praiseworthy. However, if a person does not have the intention and is unwilling to sacrifice any personal benefit to make offerings, this reluctance can easily become the cause for rebirth as a preta. Therefore, as practitioners, we must eradicate stinginess from its root. In addition, there are other scriptures that also discuss the causes of rebirth as pretas. For example, one sutra mentions that the main causes of being reborn as pretas include touching the Sangha's clean food with unclean hands, offering unclean food to the Sangha, and so on. There is another scripture that mentions a story. Once Mudgalyayana encountered a preta with a repulsive body and asked what the preta had done in the previous life. The preta replied, "I am too hungry and thirsty to talk. It would be better if you asked the Buddha about my karmic causes from previous life instead." Mudgalyayana then approached the Buddha and asked the question. The Buddha explained, "During the time of Buddha Kashyapa, a monk who had been walking a long distance became extremely thirsty. When he asked a woman who was fetching water for some water, she refused to give him any. As a result of her actions, the woman was reborn as this preta after her death." This story shows that we can easily commit wrongdoings that result in rebirth in the realm of pretas. Therefore, when we come across a beggar or a person in need, we should help them without any attitude of stinginess. Even if the help is just offering some leftover food, it is still necessary. Otherwise, it is difficult to predict the consequences of our stinginess. I can't give you an apple anymore because you talked. Meditate in this way wholeheartedly with the 3 methods for the beginning, main part, and conclusion. That is, when we meditate, generate bodhicitta at the beginning. Then meditate on the main part, You may meditate on the suffering of pretas we just mentioned and the causes of being reborn in their realm. Alternatively, you may also think about what you will be experiencing if you become a preta, or you may generate great compassion toward those mother-like beings who are currently experiencing limitless sufferings in the realm of pretas during your meditation session, and so on. Many such contents can be meditated upon. Lastly, dedicate all the merit accumulated in this session to all sentient beings. This is a complete practice, including preliminary, main, and concluding, that can generate immense merit. Okay, let's stop here for today.
Bandara Bandara